What's up, guys? Welcome back to Volume 2 of Panels and Frames, the reboot, so to
Yeah.
speak. How you guys doing?
Awesome. A lot
Fantastic.
going on. A lot of nerdy shit. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Always. That's the beauty of doing this show. Like, I feel like every week there's plenty to talk about, and even stuff from the past weeks to talk about. Like,
Right.
pop
We have a
culture.
backlog to catch up
Right.
on.
Everything's moving forward. There's so many shows and movies and pop culture things to talk about. It never stops, which is good.
Yeah, it was a big I was gonna say it's a big weekend, but it was kind of a big disappointing weekend in the box office.
Oh,
Brutal.
ouch.
Garfield, like who saw Garfield coming in so hot and strong? I didn't even know
I
that
did.
was
Their
even-
All the
marketing was
parents with
awesome.
4-year-olds saw it
Yeah.
coming in so hot.
kids, right? Like you can never go wrong with kids. And plus, a lot of times parents, I guess, see those movies more than once with the kids, like they want to see it again or whatever. So you get repeat business with that stuff. So
I heard
That
they cut
works.
out like he wasn't a lasagna eating like little snide comment making dude. They changed who Garfield was apparently. They,
really,
like, sanitized him.
I will
I mean,
say,
I saw in the grocery store they had a Stouffer's lasagna with Garfield on it. I was like, I saw that. I was like, that is the best product, cooperation with a movie I'd ever seen.
that's so funny. I honestly had no idea they were redoing, like had a new one was coming out, and it was even coming out this week. And was Odie still in it? I always liked Odie the dog.
I didn't see
I
it, but
just
we
saw people
almost did, though.
tweeting. I saw people crushing it on the Twitter machine over there, and I was like,
Yeah, I was gonna say, Tim, you didn't take the girls. Like, I feel like that's one of their movies that they would enjoy at least, even if they're not very familiar with
Well,
Garfield.
Evie wanted to, and it was raining Monday, so that's why I think Garfield got a bump because kids are like, "Oh, I got these kids." Parents are like, "I have these kids home from school, and it's not sunny out. What do I do? Go to the movies?" But then she was like, "I don't know, lost interest last minute." But I could see it getting a little bump,
Yeah, for
overperforming
sure.
a little bit.
Yeah,
But then what was the other movie that
I think
on the other side of it?
the biggest surprise was Furiosa doing so poorly, so to speak. I mean, it was like the worst box office in 20 years for Memorial Day, minus
The
COVID,
trailers-
obviously.
the trailer looks so good.
So good. And I mean, I think there's a few factors that factored into it. I mean, Fury Road came out 20 years ago or so, so it's a little like you're not of the time right now. And was kind of a prequel without Charlize in it until the end. They kind of show her character, spoiler alert, they kind of show clips from Fury Road at the end, but she's not in it. She's just clips again, like from the old movie. So not having her, but I gotta say, Anna Taylor-Joy was fantastic in it. Like when she shows up with the shaved head and the black paint on her face, looks badass. Yeah, like totally. It just didn't quite have a couple spoilers. I'm not going to get too into it, but it just didn't quite have the same action impact as Fury Road did. It was a lot more character development, a little bit slower pace. Like the little girl version of her was a good, I don't say a full quarter of the movie, but it was a good long time before she kind of came on screen and started developing her older version of the character and stuff. And honestly, Chris Hemsworth as Dementus stole the show, man. Like I want a movie about him. Like they should have just made it more about him. He was fantastic.
I was glad to see they brought Thor back.
Yeah, and I mean the reviews for him have been great, saying like it looks like he does have a future past Thor. Like he's not necessarily typecast into being that superhero guy. So
anyone that watches Netflix knows,
yeah,
he has a future. What those extraction movies are fucking. I mean, it's typecast. Like he's a big fucking.
He's an action hero.
Yeah, exactly. He's the modern day like Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
It's awesome, and he fucking nails it.
Right. And I mean, this one was funny. He had a prosthetic nose and like his crazy beard and mustache. So he kind of looked funny, but his acting in it was fantastic and got to kind of keep his accent, his Australian accent sort of in it too. And very fun. Like he was very cool. But I think, some of the shocking statistics for it were, it has a B+ cinema score. So it was good. It didn't, it has like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's still in the high zone of stuff. It was, it's a good film. It just, it's a female driven movie, but the audience
Mad
was
Max, the IP as an IP though, really drawing people in. Cause I feel like movie stars and like, even the quality is like second nature now, the way like society has developed into like IP. Like you need to have that like Dune or fucking Marvel or DC. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like, I guess there's fans from 20 years ago, but to me, Mad Max is like that whole Fury Road thing, that it doesn't have the same draw, at least in my, like, maybe there's a huge fan base for it.
I feel like the Fury Road was such a one, like it showed up and just kind of blew everybody away. You know, you were kind of like, holy crap, what is this? And it won 6 Oscars and like really kind of came one of those movies that you weren't expecting and kind of just nailed it. And then this one you were kind of expecting more and kind of let it down a little bit. And like I said, it was a female driven movie. 71% of the audience was male, only 29% was female that went and saw it. So you're making a movie about females. And you're trying, but it's a female centric Mad Max. And so you're hoping you could at least get a little bit closer to a split on that, I think. And that coveted 18 to 24 demo, 31% showed up for Fury Road, only 21% showed up for this. So you lost not only the female viewers, but you lost that coveted young, to your point, Tim, demo of what you're trying to go after with those action movies and those people to come into the theater. So that's kind of hard. And I will say, you know, it's funny. The first 3 Mad Max movies, which I don't know if you guys have even seen them, how long ago you've seen them, or if you've seen them. Thunderdome was awesome, right? With Tina Turner. That one was fantastic. But those 3 combined only grossed $70 million. So it's never like
what I was getting at is that the IP is not that strong. It's
right. It was never something huge to go into. Fury Road kind of broke through and was sort of that barrier. And what you asked, Kev, yeah, he wrote Furiosa and another one called The Wasteland. When he did Fury Road, it's kind of prequels to Fury Road, and The Wasteland's supposed to be another Mad Max movie, like you were saying, Tim, would have Mad Max in it and was sort of the leading into what happens in Fury Road, like what happened right before he was the character in Fury Road, which now it's kind of in limbo whether or not he'll get to do it. Warner Brothers says they're still super impressed with Furiosa, and really, you know, the box office is one thing, but whatever. But I don't know. It's a lot of money.
Warner Brothers has a lot of shit, so for them that is pretty. Although they had Dune, like they have some really good shit, but then they had a lot. Oh, they had Barbie too, right?
Yeah,
that's a very mixed bag of a studio. They had some really good shit and some really bad shit.
I can't stand Zaslav, the guy that runs Warner Brothers at this time. I feel like he's done so much bad for that company than good, like getting rid of so much of the IP on streaming and all of that stuff. We can get into that later on a different show, but like I just feel like I don't trust him anyway with anything. And you know, with the dude DCU coming up and giving who knows how that's going to work out also. So I don't know.
Feeling super optimistic for that.
Right.
Not
with
very
anything.
hyped.
So it was a little bit of a shame. I did, you know, I enjoyed the movie. I will say I wasn't quite as enthralled with it as I was with Fury Road. I kept waiting for it to kind of kickstart and get going. And while the action scenes that were in it were great, it just wasn't as full throttle as Fury Road. Like we actually watched Fury Road the night before just to kind of, my wife wanted to see it again and get into it. And I was like, damn, that's a fun movie. Like it is just octane fueled from the minute you started. Even the slow scenes, you're like intense. Like you're like, okay, like I know some, you know, like coming up soon. And with this one, it kind of, there was a lot more dragging out in it. And like I said, character development and things like that. So it's sad to see. I think part of the problem too with movies these days is there's so much selection at home with streaming, and 3 weeks later it's on digital, just like the Fall Guy. Right. I mean, it did so bad, but 3 weeks later you can rent it at home for, it's $20, but you can sit on your couch and watch it. So
I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that's exactly where this movie falls for me. And I don't think all movies suffer from that, but for me, it's like I'm interested in it, but not interested enough to get my ass out and go to the theater, right?
And
but there are movies that I'm going to do that, like with like Deadpool. I'm definitely, I mean, already getting tickets, right? And like there's other future movies that I'm there, but this one I was like, it wasn't enough. You have to, the hype, the buzz after the opening weekend needs to be high enough to get the next wave out there, and I don't think this had that buzz.
And I think that showed, like we were saying, with like who showed up for it. I mean, for me, I was like, I want to see it, and I want to see it on the biggest screen possible, and you know, see it in IMAX. And even for that, my father-in-law was in town, so we all 3 went. It was like $72 for the tickets. I did not realize that
because I'm going to the theaters. They have to charge more.
I was kind of used to just going by myself or my wife and I using my movie club thing and seeing it other places, but I wanted to see an IMAX. $72. I was like, holy shit! Like that's a little outrageous. And I will say, I don't want to go off on a rant here, but I will say one of the things I don't like these days are the in-theater movie dining experiences. It's just not for me. I don't understand why you have to go in and order a cheeseburger and a beer or whatever and watch a movie. Like one thing, the theater smells like they don't have enough airflow in it to like clean out the smell. It's like a bar, you know, like I like going in a theater and smelling popcorn and being like into it puts me in the
they're
zone.
They're trying to make the theater like your house.
Right. And you know, the recliner chairs and like you have this thing. But the other thing, the problem is like the waitresses come around if you need something, right? And they take people's orders. And if they're standing in front of you, it takes you out of the movie to have somebody being like, what did you want? Oh, you want more popcorn? Or you're listening to them next to you being like, okay, that was a cheeseburger. And how did you want that cooked? And you're like, seriously, I'm trying to watch a movie here. Like you're totally taking me out of the feeling of like being in the zone of a movie.
Even like dinner theater, when you go to a dinner theater thing where they do a play and have, you know, the buffet or whatever, when the actors are on stage, they don't come around. They come around in between. But a movie doesn't have a break like that.
I've done there's some movie taverns and shit that do it right though. They get all the orders up front, and like when they do it right, they say like push this button, and I know ahead of time it means you want a refill of your beer. Like they don't take orders; that just you could get a refill. But then I've been to ones like you're talking about, T, where it's a disaster. We do it a lot because honestly to streamline our dates because we have like babysitters and shit, and like so there is that part where it's like you go see a 3-hour movie and you get dinner, but I can definitely say it's not for everybody.
I get it too. I get some movies you want to do that with. Like I could see, like Kev, you were saying, like The Notebook or something. I could see some movies sitting in and not caring about it too much and being, but like at certain movies, like an action movie or like Deadpool, for instance, when you go see Deadpool, you want to be watching the movie. Like you don't want to miss anything because who knows if there's a little like throwaway scene in there or shot of something that you want to see.
I'm probably going to see that multiple times. I already know that. I haven't, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to see IMAX. I'm going to see it in like the Dolby. I'm going to see it. Maybe the fourth time I see it, I'll see it at the movie tavern.
You go to a movie. You go to a movie and like they have Texas Chainsaw Massacre on, and you order like the barbecue or something. It's not right.
There's a time and place though for the beer and the food and stuff. I just feel like sometimes when you're in that movie,
your pint, you sneak in your pint and you do a little nip.
They bring it to.
Like the old days.
The worst place to go to a movie tavern and drink beers is a movie like Dune 2 because halfway through I had to break the seal. I was like dying. I was like, oh, that was a mistake. I should have been drinking beer during this.
No,
I saw that one multiple times too, though, so it was fine.
Well, that you got to choose what movie. You know, the first time you see it, I feel like you watch it kind of straightforward, and then if you want to see it again, you can have a couple beers and know where you can take a piss break during it and stuff like that. You know, you have those moments to like break it, but it's just one of those frustrating things. And I'll say this to the IMAX theater I've gone to. I saw Dune 2 there the second time I saw it there. I saw The Fall Guy there, and I saw Furiosa there. And all 3 times they've screwed up my order at least with one thing. So I've had to have them come back while the movie's playing to be like, you forgot my Coke, you forgot my popcorn. And again, it just takes you out of being in the theater and that zone. And they tell you to turn off your phones and do all that crap. Well, boy, why not tell them not to bring people around waiting tables and shit in the theater? You know, that's more distracting to me than a phone. So
money, man, they
need to design a theater that has like a balcony and all those seats up there and no food, and then all the people with food are underneath, so you're separate.
Or the other way around, the balconies where all the food people are in the back above you, and everyone watching the movies down. And
you don't have to go to a theater that has food, though. There's still theaters that don't have food, guys. I mean,
I agree. No, I know. And that's what I was saying about
that doesn't have food.
This was like this new IMAX theater they just built out here, and I was really stoked to see it in the biggest screen that I want to. But that's one of the things. And a lot of the theaters, even my Cinemark one that I like going to, has the back row where you can get the food at the top thing and stuff. So it's just one of those popular things. I get it. They also have the restaurants attached to it, which I'm totally in favor of. So when you get out, there's like a bar there, and like they have the sports on TV, and you can sit and have dinner there or pre-show dinner. I think that's a cool thing. Just don't bring it into the theater. Like go early enough to sit in the restaurant part of the theater and do your thing, and then go enjoy the movie and eat your popcorn and Coke. So anyway, that was my rant. I didn't. I know some people like it, but that's just something I'm not really a huge fan of.
I think an interesting thing that came out of this weekend is like the health of the industry right now. And with Marvel only having one movie this year and these other like tentpole blockbusters so far struggling. Now, granted, we still have a few more big ones coming up this year. It's like, what does this look like? And I'm going to use this as a segue. I think obviously Marvel has a long future and DCU possibly, but another one that is starting to come up are the video game adaptations. I'm personally really super excited about the Zelda announcement. But like Mario even did great, and then you know they've done them on TV. Zelda, I think, is going to be the make or break for Nintendo. It's that second one. They had Mario. I think they nailed it in animation. Why the fuck they're doing live action Zelda and not just keeping in the animation is beyond me, but they're going for it. I mean, I don't know. I still think there's a future for these big movies. It's just they need to be IP centric. And I think the video games is untapped right now.
The trailer does not inspire confidence in me watching the Zelda trailer.
What Zelda trailer?
Yeah,
that's fan made.
Yeah. It's not out yet. They just announced what they're doing with it. And the director, I will say, I'm impressed. Two things, Tim. One, not doing a cartoon, like I think is kind of interesting. Like Mario, they nailed it. To your point, like when we finally watched that at home, I loved it. Like I was like, this is really clever and a well done cartoon version of the video adaptation.
Simple fan service. They didn't get too fancy with it. They didn't like put any crazy backstory. It was just fan service.
Right. And it was fun. It was good. It worked. I think with Zelda, maybe trying to go like Lord of Rings route with it, sort of thing, kind of like maybe Game of Thronesy type thing with it. And you know, the director's the guy that just did the new Planet of the Apes movie, and they used a lot of motion capture.
Yeah, and the Maze Runner. He's good at that. So I think it might be like almost like Avatar, where it's like live action, but like a highly animated live action.
And he said, well, he did say that he wanted to use a lot of motion capture in this one and ground it more in reality and practical things. Which
reality, all the races are fucking crazy. I mean, besides like the Kori or whatever you call them, and the Hylians, you got like the Gorons are big rock dudes. Yeah. Right, and the Zora are like fish dudes, like they're not Rito are like bird people. They're grounded in reality. It's high fantasy.
It's total fantasy. So I don't know. I'm excited for it, just like you are, because I think it's about time they did a Zelda movie. Like it seems like well overdue.
I never thought it would happen. The fact that they came out with this is like the announcement, it was mind-boggling. Like I honestly, even when Mario came out, I thought Zelda was off. You know why? This is the issue I think that they're going to run into, and I'm curious to see. This is the one thing I'm really interested to see how Wes handles it. Is Link the protagonist, right? Like the guy with the green hat, not Zelda, right? Zelda's the princess, but Link is quiet. He's actually named Link, for people that don't know, because he's the link between the player and the story. He's meant to be a conduit. In the games, he's silent. He has no dialogue. And he has, even in the later games where they add voice acting, all the other characters have voice actors. Link has no voice actor because they want you as the person playing to be Link, to feel like you're on the adventure. How you translate that into a movie when your lead protagonist is essentially personality-less in the entire scene, like they're going to have to assign a personality to it. And if they miss that mark, I guess my point is, like, if you play Zelda, your view of Link is different than my view of Link because they don't tell you what Link is really, right? So I feel like that giving him that, assigning him that personality is going to be a huge risk. If they nail it, it's going to be fucking huge, right? But if I mean, the last two Zelda games were two of the best selling video games in the last decade. Like they're fucking blowing everything else out of the water. There's a huge market for it. But if they fail it, Nintendo's done. Like if they mess this up, they're not doing any other movies.
And I think to your point, that's a really, really good point, is that nailing who he is and that character is everything, because you have, on the one hand, it's a blank slate because it's never been done, right? You don't have a voice, you don't have anything to it. But on the other hand, like you said, my definition of Link, or how I look at Link, is different than how you look at your Link. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so how everyone's going to have to compromise on who this Link is. It was just like when they announced like Chris Pratt doing the VO for Mario, and everyone's like, what? Luckily he nailed it, and it worked, and it was fun. But it's one of those things where you're hoping whatever they do with Link, it works. Like it has to work.
You think about like Reed Richards, right? Like with Pedro Pascal. And like how much split there is on that, because people are like, oh, that's not my Pedro, that's not right, because there's been or not my Reed, right? And that's something that's defined and has had multiple iterations, and it's still controversial, right? Maybe a hint of racism, and those people are bad, but I think there's also a legit conversation about like who my Superman is, who my Reed Richards is, who my Iron Man is. I feel like this is like a tinderbox ready to explode with like nerd hate. hopefully everybody's cool about it and just is grateful that we have the opportunity to see it on the big screen. But I could see this be a very polarizing movie. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I'm excited, but I'm also very nervous about
And
it.
if there's one thing we know, it's that nerds never have an opinion and are very, very easy to please when it comes to their IPs and their hope and dreams of what their movie should be about. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how it comes together. I'm a little skeptical of how it's going to come together, but I think as it gets more into development and we learn more about it, hopefully.
Have you seen any of Wes's movies? I think they're decent movies, but like they're all like mid-level IP. So it's like
Right.
I'm curious to see what he does with like the big budget and the big. I
And
mean, I
even
feel like he's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say even like the Maze Runners weren't fantastic, or like great movies, all and this
It
Planet
was a
of the
weird
Apes.
choice for Nintendo to be like, this is the guy we're putting our big, money
Yeah.
on. And he looks like a kid. I mean, I hate to judge a book by its cover, but he literally looks like he's 10 years old.
And maybe that's why they were like, we got nothing to lose. It's kind of a new guy. Let him see how he handles this big of a responsibility. But I mean, he did do good. Planet of the Apes was a pretty big responsibility, even though, especially kind of doing this, new trilogy reboot, so to speak, or like, it takes place a generation after the last ones. But he nailed that one. I mean, it opened. I mean, I haven't seen it. I can't tell you how good or bad it is, but judging from the box office, which I hate doing, it did really well. And so that's always a good sign.
He's also a huge Zelda fan. I've seen an interview. So he probably went in with the pitch and like to Miyamoto and all the guys over at Nintendo. He's like, I fucking love Zelda. And they were probably all like, smitten, like, oh, this guy's a fan. He knows all the inner workings and details.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, well, like going back to the Singer conversation from last week about the X-Men movies and not allowing the comics in, maybe being a diehard fan is a really important aspect to bring it to life. So, you know what? Fucking let's go. Good for
and
you,
I
Wes.
think, and as far as actors go too, let's hope whoever wants to play Link is familiar with the game and understands that, because it's just like Ryan Reynolds dressing up as Deadpool because he wanted that role so bad and coming in as the character, the auditions and stuff, like to prove I can do this. I am the guy. Maybe that's what you need from whoever's going to play Link, is to have that same passion and desire.
You need the passion all the way through. You need it
Right.
for Link. You need it for whoever Zelda is, the director. Everybody needs to be
on the same page with that. And to your point, it needs to be a fan. I feel like it can't just be hiring somebody because he looks like him or like it works because it's, this guy's a popular draw for the box office. No, you want somebody that's like, I love the game. I've played it since I was a kid. Like
I couldn't be a Link, but I could be a Goron. They're like big bulky dudes. I could totally be a Goron.
I like it,
man. Yeah. So on the other side of that, MCU, it's a bunch
wait, before we jump into the MCU, I just want to say to your point though about video games with movies, is it's been an interesting slog with what works and what doesn't work. And I think streaming has helped that lately. I mean, we've had 2 successful shows that have been translated over. The Last of Us was fantastic on HBO, and Fallout's done amazing. Yeah, has done amazing on Amazon. So I'm hoping that that's translating to big screen adaptations as well, getting this sort of new revitalized goodness in them, so to speak. I know it's working on the small screen and streaming where you're able to set up more storylines and kind of carry it through an 8-10 story arc and then have a next season to it. So building that whole world and everything in 2 hours is another feat. So I'm hoping that translates, because movies,
but they could do universes. I think if you wanted to recreate the comic book universes, they keep trying to do it in weird ways, like horror films, right? Remember that, like the Dark Universe, or like even like the Mad Max or whatever. I think that is a hard way to do it. Video games, I think, is a perfect analogous to the comic books. Like there's a whole plethora of stories. You could literally build a Zelda universe or a Fallout universe or or any number of games and can start connecting them. They're all owned by a couple of shops. I think that's how you build these cinematic universes.
I know Mattel's been trying to do that with the toys. Like Hasbro's been trying to do that with like G.I. Joe.
He-Man.
And Kev, you brought it up earlier with He-Man coming back, or trying to do another He-Man, but they're trying to combine a G.I. Joe Transformers movie in the future too with the IPs and stuff. So there is that too. Yes, it's just sometimes I feel like TV.
You have to pick the right games
and the right
storyline. You might remember this, T, but the Pac-Man movie.
Oh yeah, yes.
I remember that.
I mean, you know, you don't use Pac-Man because there is no, you know, there is a world in Pac-Man, but it isn't something like Zelda that has a built-in story, basically.
Well,
I
and you
think
brought
that's exactly it, because the Mattel stuff still requires new writers and new ideas. Whereas like the comic books and the video games, I'd argue, it's just picking the right stories and doing a new adaptation, right? There are no less than a dozen excellent Zelda storylines that are all different and unique that you could make a dozen phenomenal movies the same way you do out of the comics, right? Whereas like now they nailed it with Barbie, but like G.I. Joe doesn't have like a storyline. You have to
It's
come up
always
with
Cobra, you know.
And
Yeah.
they killed those though. I mean, those movies were so terrible. And how hard was it to make a good army base with this bad
War
villain
movie.
of like it's so I mean, I don't know. I felt like the plans were right there for them. The casting was god awful. The movies, what 2 or 3 of them that they made were crap. Like they were so bad. And you're just like, you
I
had
forgot
the
they made a G.I. Joe movie. That's how bad it was.
it was so bad. And you know, Kev, you brought it up backstage earlier about video game movies, and Tron still holds up to today. One of the best. Like Tron 2 had its issues, and they're making a third one now too. We'll see how that goes. But the first one, you can still watch that today and be impressed with it. Like I do. It's still a great
Wait,
great
the
film.
80s one or the 2000 whatever one?
The
I was gonna
80s
say
one.
both. I was gonna say both of them actually. That's one of the few examples where I think the original and the remake both hold up really well. Like I enjoyed watching the new one, and I like the original one.
And that one was made 30 years later, whatever it was. And you know, and the weird thing was putting the facial reconstruction of Jeff Bridges young in that. It didn't quite look like it, but still the storyline was there. It was a little muddled in places, but it was still a great Tron is still a great movie. It's a great IP. It's one of those that translates
does the
over.
heavy lifting. Even if they miss a few marks, you're just so excited to see it on screen. That's what
And
that's what Furiosa doesn't benefit from, right? Like it has to hit it. Whereas something like Tron or Zelda, if they get close, and then I don't know, maybe not.
Because you still want to see a light cycle driving. You still want to see the disc fighting. You know what I mean? You still want to see those things. And for nerds and even not nerds, you kind of get what it's like the inside of a computer and the CPU, and like you get all of those things now. Especially if you're watching Tron when you were a kid. I was like, I don't know any of this, but then when you watch it later, you're like, oh, I get it. Like this and this is taking place in, you know what I mean? So it's kind of fun to have that. With as much as we use computers and everything, especially nowadays, Tron sort of makes a lot more sense than it did back then. So
yeah,
you know, but I definitely I hope Zelda comes through with that. And like I said, I do like where some of these have gone as far as building out worlds, especially on the streaming and the TV shows, has been cool to see. So we'll see what's next with the video game world too. What else they decide to adapt.
I'm trying to think what other games I would absolutely like.
Final Fantasy.
Well, you know what's cool about what? They do a lot of animated that are part.
Yeah,
what's cool about that's Square Enix. Like they'll release movies and mangas and stories and comics, but actually reference them in the video games. Like they think of it all as canon and continuity. But what's also cool about it is each number is a wholly different universe. So like Final Fantasy VII has several games like Crisis Core and like that's all within its own world. 8 and 6 are different characters and different worlds. Like they're not sequential. So that really Final Fantasy is ripe for the picking to make a huge cinematic universe out of.
And another one they keep failing at, which is one of my favorite all-time games, is the Tomb Raider series. Like the Angelina Jolie movies.
They've tried a couple of times.
So over the top with her, and so like just sort of like what I call like sensationalized box office. Like let's just make money with this. The reboot was an identical copy of the latest set of the trilogy games, which were fantastic when they updated them.
I like the reboot a lot more.
It was a lot better. It was a lot truer to the storyline. It still got a little bit off the mark, and they still kind of missed it. And now Phoebe Waller-Bridges, the girl from Indiana Jones and who did Fleabag and stuff, is writing a series for Amazon on Tomb Raider. So hopefully, whatever she writes and does, which I said again,
can we make Pitfall into a game?
Yes. Yes, some of those old Atari games would be great. Pitfall, I think, is so good for it. And I mean, you know, we were just at Disneyland the other day. I wish they'd do a good Jungle Cruise movie. Like they did the one with The Rock, but I can't stand The Rock. And that movie was so...
Yeah, but they're not going to do another one right
They
away.
Can't now. No, they can't. But it's just so disappointing because they ruined what could have been a good series of movies and like a fun IP with that ride into that. So... You know, it's
Nintendo
hard.
needs to stick with the main ones, the Mario universe and the Zelda universe, not go out. but I do think these other ones have a lot of potential. You know what I was just thinking is I thought this was like a new revelation, but when you mentioned Tomb Raider, that's when it got me thinking. Like Resident Evil, they've been doing this since the early 2002. All those movies are going to be like the Daredevil and Elektra, and you know what I mean, like the comic book movies that built up to the MCU. You're going to look back at like Tomb Raider and Resident Evil, be like, those were the first adaptations that kind of sucked, but they eventually led to like good.
I mean,
and
how many?
Whoa. Are you saying that Daredevil sucked?
The Ben Affleck one?
Oh yeah.
No, I meant the TV show. I thought you were talking about the TV show.
No, I'm talking about Ben Affleck and Elektra, like the early 2000s comic.
Jennifer Garner.
Never saw it.
Yeah, with Jennifer Garner.
Those were rough.
Daredevil, but I don't like Ben Affleck, so.
Yeah, no, those were rough too. How many Resident Evils did they make? They made a ton. Mila Jovovich made a lot of those, and there was an audience for them though. Like there was
okay. I mean, they kept making them.
I would say it was a B level sort of, you know, like very BC level of them, but they kept cranking them out, and there was an audience for them, a fanboy audience for them that worked.
They had Resident Evil Apocalypse, Extinction, Afterlife, Retribution, and then the final chapter.
Wow.
So yeah, with that 6. I mean, that was a cinematic universe before cinematic universes.
Very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Very
but not top level though. Like they were okay, but they weren't what I'm hoping is the future of video game movies.
Right.
But you got to do it right. It's not good enough. I guess what that proves is it's not good enough just to have the IP. You need great writing, great acting, great directing, and now great IP. Like that's a really hard mix to hit.
It is. And then you have a bunch of suits who aren't the creatives, like telling you, oh, well, this was what will drive box office. Oh, this is what we need to do.
We
to make
did a
it
study.
Successful. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, this is what comes in when we put it into the AI machine that tells us what we need to do. And you're like, no, that's not what we need to do. We need to service the fans first and foremost, and then make it entertaining. And like you said, Tim, have the right people in the right roles to.
I didn't expect to stay on the video game thing this long, but I do have another point on it. The reason I think the MCU worked is because you had that shepherd, the Kevin Feige, who's like loved it and was passionate and protected it and developed it. And I think that's why Nintendo has the potential to really hit this market well, is because they fucking love their IP and they protect it. If a game's not ready, I've seen them delay properties 4 or 5 times, 3-4 years, and lose millions of dollars in development because they want it to be perfect. I feel like a lot of these like third-party developers with the video games, and even like Sony to a large extent, we know what they did with Spider-Man. So like they don't have a great track record.
Madam Web.
Right. And they're the ones that do that, like own a lot of those like PlayStation titles, but they don't treat it the same way. But like Nintendo, they'll fucking like, if West drops the ball with Zelda, I could totally see them being like, oh, we're going to rewrites. We're going to reshoot. Like we're going to get it right. And I think you need that stored in order to like nail these movies and not just put shit out there. So maybe from that standpoint, I'm feeling pretty confident about it.
I wish they'd do like a Call of Duty movie. I mean, talk about another IP that's just sitting there. Like they could do so much with the action, make it rated R, make it kind of like the Expendables crossed with the old Schwarzenegger, you know, action movies, and even like Extraction, kind of like we were talking about earlier, and make it this hardcore, awesome, like the video game, shoot them up, blow them up type movie. It's so right for that, I feel like, and it's right there in front of you. Like it's pretty easy to do. I think you have the characters, you have everything. So I don't know. It's interesting. It is interesting to talk about. Like I'm hoping video games can make that crossover like comic books did, you know, like, and really start becoming a little bit better quality movies that people build out these franchises out of, you know?
Yeah, I'm just reading here that they're actually developing a Call of Duty movie, so we'll see if that's legit or not.
Yeah,
but
we'll see what happens with that.
Because I was like, that sounds familiar. That would be great.
That would be great. And yeah, I think there's
Destiny. I mean, there's a lot of fucking video games that would be great.
Yeah,
movies.
Diablo.
Oh yeah, the God of War series too. Like those things would be. Yeah, there's some good ones in there that. And video games these days have such stories in them that it's almost like they did with the Tomb Raider, the last one. Like you can really kind of lift it, change a few things, and make it live action. So
they are making an Assassin's Creed movie too.
Another one, a series or whatever off of it. Because again, that was another. I worked on that one when it was first in development and came out, and I had such high hopes for that. Oh my god! Like reading the script, I was like, this is like no other video game movie I've read. Like this sounds so good. And then when it all came together, it just
Missed the mark.
A mess.
Wow, there have been a lot of. You know what? Maybe this whole segment we got to go back. God, there's been a lot of shitty video game adaptations.
There has been a lot, and ones that you're excited for, and then they just fail the fan base, and you're like, how do you miss it by that much? Because you think again, suits and offices think they know better and how to market it, and they miss it completely.
100%.
But one thing that usually doesn't miss is the MCU, and here's your segue into the MCU, Tim. So go ahead and bring us in with that.
So there's a new report out there, a new rumor that Blade is once again going into rewrites. Now, I will say that the actual quote about it is they're claiming that it's not a full rewrite, that they're punching the script and that they're cleaning it up. But this is so for those of you who don't know, Mahershala Ali announced in 2019, came out on stage when he was 45 years old. All right. And now he's 50 and it's still not even done with the writing. It's supposed to go into filming, I think, next year or at the end of this year. And I don't know. But I tied to that, Oscar Isaac was just at a comic panel. I don't think it wasn't a Comic-Con, but it was like another panel. And he was talking about Moon Knight 2 and Midnight Suns. So it got me thinking that maybe this rewrite or these additional writing is to further tie it into Midnight Suns and the potential for a project there. I hope they don't fuck up Blade, and I hope they give Moon Knight another shot. I mean, the show is okay.
I thought Wesley Snipes' Blade was so good, and I really don't like that they are going back, but I know they want to tie in the monsters into the whole thing. So
yeah, well, the Midnight Suns is fucking badass, dude. If you bring in Ghost Rider and put in Doctor Strange and fucking Wolverine, I mean, I don't know if they'll do that because he's so oversaturated, but like,
Ghost Rider,
Moon Knight.
God, you watch Ghost Rider and you're like, yeah, there's Nicolas Cage.
No, okay, yeah, but I'm also thinking like just like from the comic series and shit.
Oh, I know.
I agree with Kev though a little bit on that. The first two Blade movies were so good. Like
Chris Christopherson, who knew?
He nailed that role, and even Steven Dorff as the bad guys, and like in the first one, they were so good. Like that was one of those movies where you're like, oh damn, like was not expecting that to be that good, and they were good. And so it is a little. I think at least it's been so long since those, and like rebooting it the way they're doing it in the MCU now makes a little bit more sense and should be right. But to your point, Tim, it's a little worrisome when it takes this long, and now they're trying to like.
Can we get a Wesley cameo as like a elder vampire?
Probably, it'd be great in Secret Wars too if like you had like different blades in there. But
I think get him in Deadpool. Shit,
right?
With all the rumored cameos you're hearing for that.
Totally. I think it just worries me a little bit where it was going to fit in before, and now they've had to move it from there to where it has to fit in now, and how they're building it out now, which could be good. It could be good, but usually when you get into these kind of rewrites and these kind of things, it's not the greatest thing,
Normally, I agree with you, but I do think that they've had the wake up call after Marvel, and Ant-Man and everything.
Yeah.
And even though I liked both of those movies, even I have to admit, like, they were getting off their mark a little bit. So maybe all of these rewrites and this re-strategizing is going to be good. The other nice thing too about it being separate and like the whole Midnight Suns thing is like they're doing that. They did that with Werewolf by Night and like Elsa Bloodstone, and like it's separate, right, from like the grounded and separate from the multiversal. So who gives a fuck? Like it doesn't matter.
True.
I don't know. I like Wesley Snipes, but I would have loved it if he could have fucking gone out with Ghost Rider and Elsa Bloodstone and Doctor Strange. Like to have the opportunity to see Blade with those other characters in a Defenders style show or movie would be fucking great.
Totally. I agree.
Are we going to get, we had the one horror kind of TV Marvel thing right? With the
Yeah.
werewolf, wasn't that the
Yeah,
werewolf?
Werewolf by Night.
Yeah, Werewolf by
Are we
Night.
going to get more of those? Because I think I would like to tie in the werewolf and see all those monsters show up. You know?
Well, I think they would be in this same corner of the MCU with Blade, with the, you know, Jon Snow, right?
Right.
His Black Knight, and I don't know if they're gonna bring Strange over. I mean, Strange is kind of doing the times run out thing right now, but like, yeah, I think uh all those characters are gonna be in that corner of the MCU.
I think if it could stay in that corner and build out that corner without crossing it over too much into the other stuff, I think it would be really cool to have that stuff live over there. Kind of like what they did when we saw the Werewolf by Night screening with Giancarlo talking about it. He was sort of like, it was a one-off. It was just something I wanted to do, whatever. And I was like, I appreciate that for it being in that corner, but yeah, it would be cool to see it come back in, you know, show up somewhere else with those kind of characters in that side of the MCU, sort of that other monster universe or whatever.
You know what I want to see, damn it, is I want to see Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Matt Murdock all show back up, and maybe in the Secret Wars, because Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were married in the comic books during that. So I would, but I think that is
Avengers are going to be back.
Places. That's one of my favorite corners of the whole MCU because it's dark and it's
darker.
gritty, and they each represent a different part of New York. There's like so many layers to it, you know?
I love that, like we talked about last week with Spider-Man Noir. Like, I love that darker side of some things, you know, and I think that would be a fun area for the MCU to explore. It's not always that PG-13 bright
color. They got to go hard R with it.
Yeah, and that was one thing we talked about last week that always drew me into the DC comics, was that a little bit grittier, a little bit darker universe of those things. I like that grit. I like that sometimes there's a little bit of a divide between who's right and wrong and superheroes and things like that. I think that would be a fun area for the MCU to kind of dabble its toes in on that corner.
Can I make a quick aside, T? Because you just reminded me. There's a new a limited series out for Marvel that I want to recommend for you called Avengers Twilight, and it is gritty and dark, and I haven't finished reading it, and I'm spoilers if you are into fucking Avengers Twilight. It's a very obscure thing, but they have a Thor versus Hulk battle in the latest issue of it, and it's, from what I've heard, no holds barred. Hulk's not holding back at all, and they fight to the death. It is what you really want from that kind of battle. And those two are, I mean, they've had all sorts of battles in the MCU and in the comic book, but it's always been like their power sets, you have to hold them back because they're both good guys. This series, it's like takes place in the far future. They just go for it, and the writing is fucking like, let's see what happens.
Kill off Thor?
Well, I'm not going to say who wins the fight.
I'm not going to say who wins the battle royale, but that's a true battle royale right there. Like, that's
I think if when you rewind the tape later, I think you gave us
maybe
one.
I will say,
like, Thor's a god. You can't kill a god. Come on.
Oh yeah. Fortunately, I think. I also too want to speak. I want to, I guess, praise Marvel right now. I mean, of course, everybody praises them. It's a weird thing, but like the comic sides, I think, have been nailing it right now and like flying under the radar. But like this whole Ultimate series, like not the Hickman 2015 like Times Runs Out. Or like the Ultimate that like the movies are based on, but like they have this new one with the Ultimate Invasion, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. Like they're really good books. Like they're really well written. They're really thought out, and they're fresh takes on classic characters, like things that I haven't seen before. So I don't know. I've been reading a lot of those, and I'm very, very much enjoying them right now.
I long time ago, not that long ago, but I wrote a spec script with a buddy of mine called Banner, and it was basically like a Hulk origin story, so to speak, but it was more like about Bruce Banner kind of turning into the Hulk, and it was like a Jekyll and Hyde type thing where he was kind of turning into the Hulk, not sure what was happening to him and whatever. And because we did it sort of like as a black and white noir, like sort of low budget, anytime he turned into the Hulk, the screen went black, and then he would wake up from it and see the damage he had done or hear the news reports and be like, like struggling with not remembering that he had done this. And how do you cope with this other entity inside of you that does all these damaging things? when it's you and these things. And so like, but the thing was, you'd never have to like have special effects, because anytime he turned into the Hulk, you wouldn't see him, right? It was this other thing. And finally at the very end, once he sort of like learned to deal with it or whatever, when he turns into it, like it goes full color and you see him in the green eyes and green, and then it cuts to black as the end of the movie. So like we were like very into like doing something like that would have been a very cool one-off type shoot like that. And these are kind of like those comics you're talking about, Tim, where it doesn't quite, it's not quite what you're used to reading and stuff, but it would work as sort of this one-off storyline type thing. And it was just something I always loved when we were writing it.
Badass.
When we were writing it, it was just something I was always like, God, I can totally picture this whole thing in my head and how it would look, and it would be so fun to do. But again, it's hard to translate it, but it was really cool. Like it was a very cool little one-off that we came up with.
It sounds like it kind of reminds me of and this is a good transition, of Sentry, right? Because like that's his whole thing. It's like he's Marvel's Superman, he's like a million suns, but his greatest nemesis is Void, is like that alter ego. And it's like, how do you reconcile and get your head over like your other personality and the dark shit you do? And I guess the transition part is, we know that's going to be the main storyline or protect. I don't know. I think he's going to end up being a good guy. I don't know if it's the ultimate bad guy, but like the main point in Thunderbolts. I'm curious what you guys think, or if you're excited about it. I'm really geeking out about Sentry just because I want to see that power set. But it is I feel like all these characters are a little obscure.
We get
be
Ghost,
like the
right?
headline
Ghost
Marvel
is,
movie.
Right. Yeah. Ghost is one of the other ones.
Right.
From the Ant-Man part of the team.
Well, I think if that synopsis is correct that we watched and heard about, that Val sends this group on a mission to take care of somebody in a vault, and then they find out that the mission was actually that they're supposed to die on the mission, and then they end up being able to turn Sentry to their team, and then they all go after Val. I think that lends itself to kind of that feeling, Tim, that it would be a very cool thing to see him going from the bad guy, or what they were using him to be, a bad guy, into being sort of part of the good guys team, so to speak. And then what exactly Val is, which we're not really quite clear who she's working for, who she is. And I think that ragtag group of Thunderbolts, I think it's an interesting group of people, right? You have Ilana and Red, what's his name? Her dad from before, from the Russian movie with Black Widow. And then Ghost, like you said, Bucky, and I think even cool. Bucky, I think Winter Soldier will be in there, which I'm so bummed we never got a series. Like, why didn't we get a Winter Soldier series about him as his time being a Winter Soldier? Like, make that thing rated R, and a badass Bucky. Fucking, these were the years. Yeah, these were the years of what he was doing when he was a bad guy. So I think I'm excited for it, because I think it lends itself to being a fun Marvel movie. I don't want to say, I use that term loosely as like, not being as serious as all the other ones that are in the MCU and leading into things. Like, I'm sure it will, but I'm interested to see that, and that through line that they talked about from She-Hulk into the new Captain America movie,
Red Hulk,
with Red Hulk,
about like Weapon X and
Weapon X. God, I hope Weapon X is something in these two. I think that would be really cool. And then how that comes into Thunderbolts, which isn't until 2025, 2026 is when that's coming out. So we've got a while for things to get set up before they even
plenty of time to rewrite.
Don't say that, because they're shooting it.
They're shooting right now. I don't know if there's any more rewrites.
Don't say that. Let's hope there's not reshoots.
I agree with you. I feel like they got to fix a lot of shit from She-Hulk. And I didn't hate it as much as other people, but like one of the things I really hated was the intelligentsia, and like they made it like just like a joke website with like these like bros and like whatever. Like, yeah, make fun of the bros. Like, I'm not defending them, but like, the actual intelligentsia in the comics was like this really cool organization and had like a lot of, fun plot lines. And like, they just kind of, while making fun of those people that hated Shield, they also undermined the original content. Right. So yeah, if they go true to it and like really fucking develop it and make it badass and do it like The Boys or like the good Suicide Squad, I think it could be really good.
That would be
but
cool.
I could also see them Disneyfying it.
Yes.
And being just like happy, it's like welcome Sentry. Like Sentry needs to be fucking twisted, right? The way you can have an overpowered motherfucker like that and make it work in a compelling story is that he's mentally fucked up and twisted, right? Like it needs to have those the questions where you're like, oh, you know what I mean? Where you leave the theater thinking about it, like that's really twisted and messed up. It can't just be straightforward, like, oh, they went to this guy, they made him good, and now they have a Superman. Like, it can't be like that.
And now he's part of this new team that he's on and whatnot. And yeah, and I think to your point, I'm hoping She-Hulk, I enjoyed it too. I'm just hoping that it leads to more than it was, because I mean, she was the first character to break that fourth wall, like in the TV shows, in the MCU. Like Deadpool's now obviously doing that, but he wasn't quite in the MCU yet. He was still on the Fox side of things when he was breaking that fourth wall. So she was the first MCU character to break that fourth wall and kind of
she
have
really broke. You fucking go into the Kevin bot and shit.
Yeah, and the Disney screen, the
that was
Disney
I
Plus
love
screen.
the popping off the Disney screen. The Kevin thing, I'm still like, maybe feels like too far, but I don't know.
But I'm hoping something with that, with how it relates to Deadpool and how it relates to Captain America going forward, and that through line means something more than just what that show kind of tossed itself into. You know what I mean? Because it I don't know.
If it were a one-off standalone, I think I would have liked it more because it was fun,
right,
to watch. I just hate what it did to the continuity. Like the fucking Scar thing at the end and like throwing in Hulk's son without any development or any explanation, the fucking up the intelligentsia, the just erasing the plot lines, like that level of superpower. Like you could argue that She-Hulk's the most powerful person in the MCU right now because she could just fucking break the fourth wall and just change. Right, it's like the God of Stories things. Like she has that like Loki power,
and I wonder if they didn't address that in Loki, which I understand why. But I wonder if they'll maybe address that a little bit in Deadpool, and do something.
Deadpool might just be like, "Oh, this is out of the continuity. Cut it
exactly,
out.
And clip that timeline or whatever, and leave that out of it." But it would be nice to have some sort of culmination to what that was and what that all meant, because it also, like we've talked about before, was kind of the start of the crappy shows. Like see, like all of that kind of like happened with those, like that run of shows. Even the Hawkeye show wasn't, it was fun, but it wasn't great. And then Echo was, what led into
really
Echo.
Hawkeye was important for the end of it.
Right?
Kingpin
because she's
right,
Kingpin, and she's now an event like going to be in the Avengers, so it had to set her up. It just was a little.
Kingpin has to be one of the best of all the villains. Like an individual, just one-on-one villain.
Yes. And I wish he would get his own show. Again, we talked about building out the villains, and I know I'm really excited to see what the Penguin show is, because again, Colin Farrell playing that Penguin role with the makeup on, and I love what he does. Why not build
the DCU off of the Batman in that universe? They have so much potential there. Fucking what's his face Twilight guy did a great job.
Oh, he was great. Robert Patterson as that Batman.
Sorry, I don't mean to. That's such a dick move, like Twilight guy, but that's what I think of.
No, I know totally. It's hard to remember his name all the time. I agree with you though, and even
he was good in Tenet too. He's actually a really good actor.
He's really good. I agree with that. And having Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman is
fucking great too.
Fantastic Catwoman. So you have this great universe set up there, and then doing the Penguin TV show. You could really build this out. Like I feel like there's something.
And build it up like they did off of Iron Man. Don't start a whole fucking new thing. Just use this.
I totally agree.
Can I just say that they totally ruined the end of Gotham by cutting the season in half. They tried to tie up all these loose ends, and I thought Gotham was so great.
Fucking phenomenal. That could have been a fucking DCU too. They could have built off of that, or Joker, or Joaquin Phoenix is like that. They could have built it off of. What they really, if everything went perfectly, and if I could recreate history and be the God of stories, Dark Knight trilogy before the third movie, just like Iron Man 1 and 2, would have set up the DCU, build it up, give Christian Bale like $1 billion, million, however much money you can give him, and build it off of that. That would have set up the greatest cinematic universe of all time. The tone was perfect. It wasn't too light like Marvel, but it wasn't Zack Snyder too dark and too obscure.
Yeah,
the tone was perfect. The acting was perfect.
So who's the movie you bring in third then? Where Captain America was the third one in the MCU?
Superman, keeping Superman with the tone of Dark Knight.
But but build out the Lex Luthor first to bring in Superman with that. And honestly, with Nolan doing it, you have Jonathan Nolan right there, his brother, to write it all. Like you have the guy that creates these great stories and these great worlds. Let him create the DCU and let him build that whole thing out. Like that would have been spectacular. I agree completely. And Kev, to your point, Kingpin is awesome. I wish they would do a Kingpin show. Like, stop making him in Echo and in these other, like, give him a show, make him this badass villain character, and develop things around him.
Part of the problem with that is they did so much with Daredevil with him.
Right.
They really ran through his whole story from him coming out and then getting arrested, whole
they
thing.
Can't do it now, but this is something that, like, if they could, or even, I don't know who's controlling
I think
Val.
they will, though. The rumors and based on all the signs are leading to he's going to become mayor of New York, right? From the post-credit scene from Echo, and I think he's going to be the big bad of the Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 4, and going to be the big bad of the Daredevil Born Again. So I think he's going to be the big bad of the grounded level. I don't think they're going to give him his own series. But you got Doom in there to be the fucking big bag for the cosmic and like and the multiversal shit. Sure, bring Kang back as like a side character, but Kang was never was suited to be the main big. No, although Kang is in these Ultimate comics and he's fucking badass because they do the right thing with the Iron Lad. And if you do Kang right, you can do it right. But they fucked it up for the MCU. But yeah, and then have Kingpin be the main for the grounded, the street level.
Yep.
God, I could write this. Kevin, call me. I could help you out, buddy.
I love it. I love nerd out on this stuff. It's so fun. Like, this is so much fun. And whatever you guys think too, throw it in the comments. Let us know what you guys all think about all of this talk that we're throwing out there and what you'd want to see and how you would have done things differently or do things differently now even, and what you think of it all, and between the MCU and the DCU and the video games and all this stuff. It's you see how passionate we are about it. Like, we love talking about this shit.
Zelda right now. You guys got me all excited. All right, guess we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Make sure you tune in Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. We have our Sunday morning show, which might be a little different than this if you don't know us. And we're not always all comic books all the time.
But when we are, we love talking about it. So until next week, go see movies, go watch streaming. Let us know what you're watching and what you're enjoying, and tune in next week.